All right, can everyone begin taking their seats, please, as I start to introduce the next session. Hi, everyone. Welcome again. I'm Madison Hayes. I'm an intern for the Conroy Literary Center, and I'm also a senior student at USCB. I'm an interdisciplinary studies major and an aspiring writer myself, which means I will be living closer to that. Welcome again to our 4th annual Pat Conroy Literary Festival. This year, the annual poetry reading session for our festival is sponsored in part by a generous gift from the Poetry Society of South Carolina. We hope you will also consider making a gift in support of the festival and our Conroy Center, which you can do at our donation box. This year's reading will feature 4 exceptional poets, Maureen Ryan Griffin, Miho Kinos, John Lane, and John Pineda. They will be signing books together following the reading, of course. Award-winning poetry and nonfiction writer Maureen Ryan Griffin has taught writing and creativity workshops for 15 years at many locations, including Queen's University and the John Campbell Fulton School. Maureen has also been a commentator on public radio, and she has penned "This scatter of blossoms when the leaves are in the water and spinning words into gold." And her work has appeared in numerous publications, including the Charlotte Observer, Potato Eyes, Calliope, Chelsea, and Catfish Stew. 10,000 Cicadas Can't Be Wrong is her latest book of new and selected poems. She lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. Miho Kinos is a Japanese-born writer and translator and the author of the poetry collection Today, Fish Only. Her work has appeared in various journals and anthologies. Miho conducts haiku workshops at many locations, including Shanghai International Literary Festival, the Pat Conroy Literary Center, local libraries and schools. She holds an MFA from the City University of Hong Kong. John Lane is a professor of English and environmental studies at John Woodford College. I'm going to project. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. An author of numerous books of essays and poetry. He's the author of Waist Deep in Blackwater, Chattooga, and Circling Home. His poetry collection includes Abandoned Quarry and Anthropocene Blues. Neighborhood Hawks is Lane's latest work, documenting the lives of hawks and exploring the close quarters relationships humans and animals can have. He lives in Spartanburg, South Carolina. John Pineda, without an H, is the author of the novels Let's No One Get Hurt and Apology. His memoir, Sleep in Me, was a 2010 Barnes & Noble Discovery Great New Writers Collection. He's also the author of 3 poetry collections, Little Anodyne, winner of the 2016 Library of Virginia Literary Award, The Translator's Diary, winner of the 2007 Green Rose Prize, and Birthmark, winner of 2003 Crab Orchard Award Series in Poetry Open Competition. Pineda lives in Virginia and teaches at the College of William and Mary, where he's director of the Creative Will Arts Program, Creative Writing Program. Please welcome me and welcome me.
Well, welcome everyone. I want to say thank you for being here, and thank you to Jonathan and Stephanie and all the other people who work so hard to make this wonderful festival happen. I'm reading from 10,000 Cicadas Can't Be Wrong, and I wanted to start off with a little quote about cicadas by John Berger. Do you know the legend about cicadas? They say they are the souls of poets who cannot keep quiet because when they were alive, they never wrote the poems they wanted to. So I decided I was going to write mine, the poems that I wanted to. And I'm going to start off with one called Voice Lessons. And this has an epigraph by Linda Paston. When my griefs sing to me from the bright throats of thrushes, I sing back. Is it the smell of hyacinths in the house that makes you notice people falling all around you, falling for want of words? A boy loses a father, a boy you knew only once on a summer evening catching fireflies, and mostly you remember his face was dirty, but still, to lose a father, you want a word, but you can't find one, so you are silent. Finally, you understand why people turn their heads away, won't look grief in the eye. Now someone you love is losing a brother, and again, the silence reaches up to strangle the words in your throat. For what do you know? Is it enough to listen to Rachmaninoff while you knead bread for her, pat comfort into the dough? Is it enough to plant a garden, to teach your son the word Pieris, as you show him their pendulous blossoms, to hear him love the word, make a litany of it, affirm over and over, Pieris, 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 is, as though he'd been born to learn how to sing. When I led my poetry workshop yesterday, I talked about prose poems, so I thought I would read one here today, and this poem's called Sweet, and it's written for a friend of mine, a poet friend named Dee Dee Mitchell. Some days I know it's all sheer gift. Like this morning, walking the dog under a yellow umbrella, juggling a cup of coffee with the handle and the leash, happy fool that I am. All the people who drive by saluting me with a wave and a smile. Like tonight over dinner, after whining to my friend Dee Dee that I haven't been writing anywhere near as often as I'd like, how she says, we could write when we get together. Let's write right now, I say, eager to work with an essay about my mother's sweet parsnips, having had an idea 2 days ago I've been itching to play with. And though she's reluctant, she has no paper, only her work laptop. She meant next time. She says yes, but just for 10 minutes. Do you need a prompt, I ask? And she says yes, so I riffle through my bag for leftover handouts from one of my writing classes, come up empty except for a flyer from a writer's workshop held months ago. There's a poem on the back. Here, I say, close your eyes and let your finger land on a line and run with it. She wrinkles her nose when she reads her line, sweet with songs of indefinable. And I ask if that will work, and she says yes, and I say, that's kind of cool because I'm writing something about sweet myself. And off we go, 10 minutes right there in the noise of the fortune cookie, where we are because we love their sa-cha chicken, and they don't care how long we sit. When our time is up, we read each other what we've written, and hers is beautiful, sweet indeed, on its way to a poem about the texts her freshman son sends her from college, and mine needs much work, but is a beginning. And I am happy, and we agree that a little bit of writing time is enough to be a writer on those days when that's all there is. After all, Dee Dee says, she just heard Gertrude Stein only wrote an hour a day. So much is good enough these days that didn't used to be. Earlier, the waitress cleared our plates and left the bill, topped by 2 fortune cookies in cellophane. And Dee Dee reaches for one, pushes the small tray toward me, says, that one's yours. I crack it open and, no kidding, read, it is sweet. We laugh and laugh, so tickled, so amazed, so glad to be here. Whatever it is, yes, it is sweet. Thank you. And I have to read a poem, love poem to Richard on his 54th birthday. That's Richard in the back row, my husband who has been my support staff.
No longer 54.
For many years. He's older than 54 now. Happy 54th, honey, but that's not the number I'm counting, which is 23, which means only 26 plus an odd half year or so until we reach the 50th wedding anniversary you promised me. A promise I extracted the night we got engaged. A promise underwritten with a forgiveness clause as practical as you take pride in being, in case God or the universe has other plans. Who could have imagined halfway would loom so soon? Our children grown and gone before I could turn around to wave goodbye? Who could have imagined we'd find so much to argue about? So many ways to annoy each other, that certain set of your jaw, the way the sarcasm drips from your yes, dear, how you refuse to give me my due when I'm right and you're wrong, as is so often the case. My transgression shall go unlisted, since this is, after all, my birthday gift to you. Darling, I love being the gosling to your pack mule, the daylily to your sturdy oak. You are the locomotive to my club car, the centerboard to my spinnaker, the one I can rely on to call a spade a spade. Never anything more or less. And though I could, as you know all too well, go on and on, because these words are for you, I will not, except to say thank you for delivering on so many promises, spoken and unspoken, for waking before me so many mornings, to faithfully walk the dog you didn't want, for cooking all those giant pots of homemade spaghetti sauce that fed us all for days, for holding me close against the coming dark. And I'm going to close with a poem written for my mother. It's called Leaves, Wind, Light, Wings. This fall morning, through my open back door, I watch a flurry of leaves swirl through sun, golden themselves, scraps of pure light against exultant blue. Past the windows rush more, their shadows dark behind closed blinds, driven as birds, yes, geese, winging their sure way south. The world is so beautiful, even as it reels through our grasp. Here in this room, wearing a green dress that was my mother's, I will open all my windows and doors as if I have nothing to hide, imagining her happy at last, her hands raised high. She is shaking the trees to make this loveliness. She is the wind, the leaves. She is the geese. Thank you.
Festival is focused on nature and memory, but people say that because haiku requires seasoned word. So there are so many haiku about blossoms and moons and rain and snow, but it's hardly ever about nature. My first piece is called The Pistachios. Spring rain, two smashed frogs, pistachio green. Arguments in the heat, scooping seawater with a pistachio shell. Apple butternut salad with pistachio can be replaced with almond. Pistachios in my hands sound like the last match in a box. So seasons, but have read a definition. Haiku is a poem of sensations, not even emotion, never sentimental, kind of like nature. Earlier, Rachel Carson said, "Sea is the poem." Maybe it. I'm going to read this piece. This one is, I think nature, the elements of nature define time and place. And in this piece, the present and past are kind of mixed, collaged together. And in a random obituary, I hear of your death. No more rain, the balcony is still wet. You have been dead for 8 months. A deep river flows between the ears laid out side by side. You are always late. Red and goldfish hide under a rock, always late, with your sleeves carefully folded. A cat knows the sunny spot. Flash lilies stick their heads out of the net. I haven't forgiven you for showing up with a comic book that day. Bright leaves don't see me in the interior darkness. A downstairs neighbor talks to me for the first time. The back door is ajar. 2 mosquitoes are in. I try, but I cannot remember much else about you. I have written some haiku and with a group of people, so that became a linked haiku. And I'm going to read just a few, first in Japanese and follow each in English translation. What I had in mind was a friend of the family whose nickname was Moon, like Moon Pie, Moon, that was his nickname, and he passed. たゆたいて不良少年橋向こう A bad boy drifting by on the other side of the bridge 僕は月釣り名人の丸い顔 They call me Moon, a skillful fisherman, the moon face 駆け抜ける桟橋の果て月の砂 Run to the end of the pier, moon sands 初しぐれ折りたたみ傘出さぬまま November rain, folding umbrella still in my bag. Thank you. Maybe you can catch 575 sound in Japanese, maybe. Okay. This one is, the first one was collage. This one was link. This one is composite. It's a travelogue. It's a composite travelogue. Snow country. The train arrives, brushing flurries away. I step on. Winter orchards, branches helped by wires, frozen scent of apples. Whiter than white, a gray egret in a field, a blue patch in the sky. Fallen into whiteness, the flowerless forest, I see the fall blossom. Don't be afraid, the gentle traveler. Snow creatures cries. Yellow lamps, too dark to know, too bright to hide. I came out for breath and I find you beyond snowdrift. I sip coffee, wiping the condensation with my fingers. A a little girl, her red cheek and purple kimono brighten the morning sun. Up the slope, following a feral cat to the temple gate, besieged 500 attained bodies by the midday bell. The third of the eaves can no longer hold on. My last piece, it's about my brother-in-law. He passed away as the Hurricane Matthew approached. We went to his funeral during our evacuation. And after that, my brother-in-law, my husband, his wife, my brother's wife, and I went to a concert in the park in Macon, Georgia. Half moon, the horizon hemmed with autumn hydrangea. An aged photo on the older brother's fridge shows his small children climbing all over him like tropical fruit. A provincial politician gives his eulogy. Family, friends, and neighbors reunite or meet for the first time. Some people gossip about the female worker in the black suit. On the day of the funeral, the hurricane ravages the coast. The city, 3 hours inland, maintains its perfect October weather. On the weekend, we haul folding chairs and catch a concert in the nearby park. From the stage at the bottom of a hill, the bluegrass tunes creep up the slope of fading lawn. The horizon hems the city, the river, and the woods. Bats slash the air dome. The sky shifts through the shades of autumn. Hydrangea, the half moon is up. We're here, he's not. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm going to start out with my attempt at a sonnet. This is my sister who died young takes up the task. A basket of apples brown in our kitchen. Their warm scent is the scent of ripening. And my sister, entering the room quietly, takes a seat at the table, takes up the task of peeling slowly away the blemished skins. Even half-rotten ones are salvaged carefully. She makes sure to carve out the mealy flesh. For this, I am grateful. I explain, this elegy would love to save everything. She smiles at me, and before long, the empty bowl she uses fills, domed with thin slices she brushes into the mouth of a steaming pot on the stove. What can I do? I ask finally. Nothing, she says. Let me finish this one thing alone. I'm going to read from this collection, Little Anodynes, and I must thank Jonathan and Nikki Finney for publishing this book. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'll begin with the first poem in here, which I tried to capture my first concert. And my wife and I were sitting around one day talking about, what our first concerts were, and I had mentioned that mine was the Stray Cats, and I think hers was the Bee Gees, so she won. This is his first concert. In front of us were teenagers with shoe-polished black mohawks, passing a joint back and forth, one with hair pulled into nails, glistering with gelatin. Then the lights went down, and we could feel Lee Rocker's bass lines filling our chests. Our hearts pulled taut and plucked, amplified. I was a small kid, 11 years old, and unsure, grinning with a contact buzz. Then my friend nudged me and pointed again. We followed the glowing speck as it spun, landed on lips brightening for a sec, then lost in smoke. Brian Setzer, skinny and tattooed, was all sleeveless snarl, his tempered crooning, slinging his glittery electric hollow body. He strummed and stamped his buckled boots, the stage looking slick with sweat and colored lights. I wouldn't believe I was learning something about the world. On the car ride home, my friend and I punched each other. We didn't know how to feel, so we took it out on one another. The lights on the Hampton Roads bridge tunnel ticked by, combing through the interior of the Cadillac. I would look up and see my friend's father nodding to the music. On the radio, his gray mop of hair swatting at the stretched cloth of the ceiling. Strands stood on end like an orb of electricity, one of those glass balls you might find crackling with small neon lightning in a novelty storefront window. My friend punched me in the stomach and laughed. We scrambled into the trough of the floorboard. I returned the gesture. This was 1982. When I got home, my sister was standing in the hallway with her arms folded in front of her. She took one look at me and said, "You're high," then laughed quietly and went back in her room where the walls were covered in teen magazine poster pullouts. In another year, a car accident would take away this version of her. Sometimes I like to go back to this brief moment in the hallway, the two of us there, sharing what we both knew and would never know. This is Strawberries. Newborn Luke rests on my chest. Downstairs, you rummage the dark for the breast pump. The refrigerator door opens with a quick, sucking sound. Because our house is small, I hear this. Know by now you must have found those blood-red strawberries in a bowl I placed inside on the glass shelf. I lean as close to him as I can. I smell you on his breath. Then a knife slides deep into the sink. Its blade, even wet, sounds against the skin of rubbed porcelain, cast iron, fresh rust. I think of the man my son will become and kiss him softly on the mouth. And I'm going to end with this one. This poem came about because I'd been invited to read at this festival in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, at Franklin and Marshall. And our kids were very young, so we decided to turn it into a family vacation. And we packed the car and we headed to Luray, Virginia, to go to Luray Caverns with the stalactites and the stalagmites there. What we didn't pack was an extra pacifier, which was an absolute, just a ridiculous oversight on our part. So this is the poem, Ceiling and Ground. And ceiling and ground is, this kind of a lesson if you already know this. I didn't know this at the time, but ceiling for stalactite, so the C, that's the thing that comes down from the ceiling, and then ground, stalagmite, with the G, it comes up, so that's how you tell the difference. But again, I didn't know that. Ceiling and ground. Our docent of limestone, A local boy hums, nudges the air where a glazed column has grown together. There, stalactites verge on stalagmites emerged from a pool of milky blue water. Amy whispers to me, "It's easier if you just remember C is for ceiling and G is for ground." I push the stroller. She holds Luke's hand. Within our group of land dwellers, we descend farther into the main chamber. It is a slow spiral downward. All must negotiate the slick decline. At one point, our young guide's voice breaks as he beckons beyond the guard railing, says, "Over there's Pluto's chasm," and goes on to explain how it doesn't end, or at least, from what we can tell, it sinks through itself. In a moment of collective awe for the god of the underworld, it is then our daughter removes the pacifier from her mouth and hurls this most prized possession into the precious abyss. I wish I could say it didn't happen. Shocked, the group then continues on, and we, parents of an irreverent soul, follow, bowing our heads. Though embarrassed, I'm secretly pleased. I know Amy is as well, since she asks the guide if they ever have to clean out these caverns. The boy pauses, looking for the right words. I don't envy him, nor the one, he explains, who must be lowered with ropes and harness, searching the dark for those unfortunate signs of life.
Wow, thanks, those are all great. I keep wondering what these birds are thinking about at Conroy Parade Festival, flying on the edges here. So I'm going to start with a poem that has birds in it, metaphorically. This is for Betsy. It's called Nighthawks. Grief does not rise like mosquitoes from night grass. It comes from above like nighthawks out of darkness into remaining light. After dinner, our mother's deaths are birds soaring above us. Jenny's dead to the bird of indulgence. Mine dead to the bird of sadness. Beth's dead too. The bird of neglect carried hers away. Yours dead years now to the bird of deep memory. Jenny is so round, her stomach looks like it could hatch that baby. The bird of untouched childhood spreads its wings among us, the bird of second chances. I got a great assignment about 15 or 20 years ago. I got a call from the manager for the Bluegrass Fiddler, Mark O'Connor, and he said the manager said he'd read some of my poems, and he wanted me to write the liner notes for his next CD, and that he was just going to send me a bunch of tapes of the songs that all instrumental, and let me write poems to them, and then he put the poems in the liner notes, and he did it. And I got to write this series of poems. He sent me about 6 songs that he wanted me to write to. His CD was called Midnight on the Water, and he sent me titles to each of the songs, but they were fiddle songs. And I just got to write the words, whatever I heard. So this is one called Bluegrass Gypsy, and I wanted to read it because we just spent 2 weeks driving through Arkansas, through the Delta in Arkansas. I kept thinking about this poem. gypsy. Rhapsody is a sin tied with red country rags. Rhapsody is old cafes, road dust, stop signs bent at odd angles, a hopped up old watchman walking the same beat every night, a tiny hopper full to the brim with lug nuts, a cat crossing the road just down from the spreading light. In the old lot where we used to gather, the ground is rubbed bare where the wagons sat. If this century has a soul, it's mine, dark, spicy, and itinerant. These are my wagons full of grief. These are my wagons full of pots and pans. These are my wagons painted gaudy colors. These are my wagons pulled by horses. Follow me down there, where the war is always our coming. Follow me to the edge of town. You'll know why I'm blue. You'll know the mystery of my blood. Bluegrass, blue note, blue origin. I'm going to read one more of those because I read the wrong one. I want to read the one about the Delta. And I didn't. So, this one's called Delta Morning Blues. Dirt roads beat pavement in a blue storm. Dirt roads retreat in the rearview mirror. I'm driving forever, a forlorn, four on the floor, four-barrel roaring fatwood fool. Fill my misery with the mingled, misted memories of old towns, old gowns, old growling hound dogs, a hill boy's best evening sound. Headed down through sticky, hot Marigold, Mississippi, headed south of that wide spot in a blue streak, Elvis plaques in the dry pine woods, headed down through the wide alley of dawn. Not slowing down for rainbows or crop dusters, not slowing down for sisters with big wigs, not slowing down for donut shops or crossing guards, not even slowing down for that scratching hound. This car guzzles gas like my old lady spends life insurance money when she thinks I'm dead. My foot's found a wide chrome future. The wife, she can find a future too. Something city safe and long wearing. My happiness is road bound. Goodbye, Memphis. Look at me, crawling behind a Delta school bus. It's slow as a two-car crash. It's slow as a ham hock or a knife cut on the mend. You slow down too, Farmer John. There's too much to see. Too long gone now to flip back, jack up, or junk out. Too many ways to twist this dial and find that deep Delta sound. Almost half past time for a six-pack. Are we not on the road, brother man? I published a book a couple of years ago called Anthropocene Blues, and it's about half the poems in the book are written from the persona of a geologist who travels a lot. And then there's also a long poem called Erosion that moves through the book, and then there's some poems that are sort of in my voice. They're all poems kind of reflecting on this moment we're in, climate-riddled, climate change moment, and whether or not we've entered a new geological epoch or not. I'm very interested in geology. But one of these poems was written down in the Virgin Islands. I was down there on a vacation, and I gave it to the geologist. And I wrote it after my vacation reading of a biologist named E.O. Wilson's book, The Social Conquest of Earth. And I've been snorkeling, and this poem came out of that experience. While snorkeling, the geologist encounters E.O. Wilson and his book, The Social Conquest of Earth. You know, Wilson made his career writing about ants and termites, and he teaches at Harvard. Floating like detritus through the national park, I kick a time or two, past the urchins and seaweed and damn, The aquatic tourist community waves back as their youth social cousin visits from the upper world of clear air and hard-won symbolic culture. Some say all this led to me, distant bipedal kin, now pushing the whole of life toward the sixth great extinction. And I'll admit, it's this gnarly drama that's on my mind, my pleasure island reading. E.O. Wilson's study of the whole of life, from early sponges to the production of yachts for the tourist trade winds. Suspended in my 60,000-year-old intellectual bubble, I marvel at reefs still carrying on like soldiers in the great campaign of life, transcribed a billion years before we got our Pleistocene draft cards. Didn't this invertebrate district get the memo? Above their brittle ghetto floats the planet's boss, the big chief, the emperor of air, diesel fuel, bow thrusters, and tax shelters. Yet down here, life goes on, though bleached of much of its color by our modern chemical toxins. I'm trying to put it all together in my poet's watery grasp, what Keats famously called negative capability, and I expel another scenario up my snorkel. We are so many billion bubbles in a briny blue melodrama with no choreographer and a set eaten by termites and ants. Should we really applaud how the show never closes? A few more nibbling fish, and I try another morality tale. Maybe my ancestors of Flipper Cortez and the squid and parrotfish don't know the colonial ships named You're Screwed and La Dolce Vita. Landed 2 million years ago when the big-brained apes, a lot like me, came down from the trees. Then I rounded Drowned Point, and there is Dr. E.O. Wilson himself, a big barracuda come in from the deep water. I watch as his fixed eyes pass over me like nothing, a snorkeling poet, a sea cow, a moving point among the flowing arms of briny fans feeding on zooplankton. Wilson cruises on, gulping once or twice, devouring the minnows of religion and philosophy and art as he passes, feeding, feeding, feeding. We all go at it in our own way. Mine lacks much of the Enlightenment rigor of Dr. Wilson's new theoretical chapters on the history of evolution. No barracuda. I take in my calories from romantic experience and build my own exoskeleton like the coral tips rubbed raw below me. I muse on how Keats would have liked snorkeling and how my 3-day trip here, 3 trips here in 20 years have built a new colony of ideas and images piling up within like an artificial reef around a sunken steamer. The torpedo fish passes again, and it's a real barracuda, not Dr. Wilson after all, and interested this time only in my shiny wedding ring, and I hightail it for the Veneto, leave Wilson's imaginary forms behind, and get real about the intellectual food chain. Now I'm going to do something which I really enjoy doing today. I'm going to read poems off my iPhone. I don't know why I get such a kick out of it, but I do. For about, I guess about 3 years now, I've been working on a new collection, and I got to have a trick a lot of times to write poetry. For some reason, I like to write for projects, or I'm not a formal poet, and so I like to find some ways to limit me. And one of the things I wanted to do after this book, Anthropocene Blues, which has a lot of poems, as you can see from that one, that verge on prose, I wanted to limit myself, and I said, wow, the width of the screen of the notes function is a perfect limit for a poet. And so I decided I'm going to just, when I want to write, I'm going to write these little short poems that are only that wide. So I'm going to read a few of those. This is about as political as I get. I don't even remember what political crisis this was. You might remember. I think it had something to do with one of the budgets, passing a budget. but the title is No One Has the Votes to End This Impasse. Dozens of crows crowd the oaks, the sky in session, armed with their calls. A hawk, likely, the swarming from all sides. This space between species is deafening sometimes. From where I stand to where this Congress of corvids and raptors parses their differences could be measured as victory, defeat, or mere cacophony, depending on how much weight you put in theories of animal intelligence. Vote, damn you. The bickering horizon answers, hell no, for this is old fun. Wrapped, as in raptor. When I look up, it is crossed hawk wings I see gliding above. My mind rests there, attending the gaze from another mirror intelligence, hungry for any hiding below. I've ended up writing a couple of poems. I'll read about 3 more of these little short ones. I ended up writing a couple of poems about dead poets, because there have been a lot of deaths of poets the last few years. And so here's one called Today Mary Oliver Died. And so I walked into the woods alone and heard the wild geese together in their intimate honking flight, calling from above through winter branches. There was no sadness below as they passed. Yes, the gray corridor of sky emptied out, but not for long. A moment later, the wren nearby took up the frayed ends and carried on. Okay, this is an occasional poem called For Christmas, Betsy Gave Me a Flipped Bird Calendar. A lot of bird poems. It's for the birds back there. Godwall, brant, horned grebe. Torn off passing days, raft like floating waterfowl on my cluttered desk. A flutter of colored paper, too pretty to trash, to file, or recycle. Did you know people tend to think of ducks as pirates? These are quotes. Did you know the brant is a sophisticated looking goose and has a light gray belly? Did you know horned grebes swim toward each other, spread their horns apart, and rise upward in their elaborate mating ritual? Two more. This one's a little maybe a little poetry centric, but I have a friend who's got really obscure poetry, and he sent some obscure poems. He's been highly published, won bunches of awards, but his poems are hard to understand. And so he ended up sending some poems to an environmental magazine, thinking they might like them, and they hated them. And he sent me the rejection, and I just broke it into poems. It's called Comments for the Author. At the level of the poem, there's a place for confusion, but all I get is the music. Still, without something for the mind to grip, the narrative side of the mind, or alternatively, a kind of flag or indicator, this poem feels the mind takes it easy, takes a day off. All I get is the music. Clearly, the author has a skill. Forget meaning entirely, or glean a meaning, but all I get is the music. One more. All right, one more bird poem for the birds. This was I wrote last February, the first poem I wrote that February. I have a month, and that's the only thing. I don't want to date them, but I'll say February, and then there are 5 or 6 February poems. A hinge has opened on hard times, but the first sparrow sings again. And the song pours down the walls. The warmth rises. The sky is so blue. nose pool and deep gullies reserved dark. I am happy it turned out like this, at least one more day. Thank you. Questions maybe? We got, Jonathan, what do we got? Looking at?
You got 2 or 3 minutes for
2 or 3 minutes. Thank you, questions.
What word is that?
I've been trying to, does anybody know anybody? I've been trying to get a good look at them.
It's some
Are
kind
they-
of sparrow.
Some kind of sparrow, that's what I thought. We need to put some bird seed at the door.